Commander Taehyun rubbed his tired eyes as he stared at the space station's main screen. It was his 5th year leading research outpost Sigma-7, sitting on the edge of human space. The outpost was small but important. Its job was to watch for new life and to be the friendly face of humanity if anyone showed up. "Commander, you should sleep," said Jiwoo, the communications officer. Her dark hair was tied back in a simple knot, and worry lines creased her forehead. "Soon," Taehyun promised, though they both knew he wouldn't. Not with strange signals coming from the darkness beyond their sensors' reach. The outpost housed only 12 people. They were scientists and researchers, not soldiers. Earth's government had decided long ago that first contact should be made by people of peace, not war. "The signals are getting stronger," Jiwoo said, her fingers moving quickly over her control panel. "Whatever it is, it's big and moving fast." Taehyun nodded and pressed the alert button. Within minutes, the other 10 crew members had gathered in the command center. They were excited but nervous. Humans had met 3 alien species so far. All meetings had been peaceful, but something about these signals felt different. "Could be a natural space event," suggested Do-hyun, the science officer, but his voice lacked conviction. Then it happened. The sensors lit up as something huge dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Not one ship, but dozens, then hundreds. That's a fleet," whispered Taehyun. "A war fleet." On the main screen, they watched as ship after ship appeared. They were sharp, angular vessels that looked like predatory fish made of black metal. Red lights glowed along their hulls like eyes in the dark. "Send the welcome message," Taehyun ordered, following protocol even as his stomach tightened with fear. "And alert Earth Defense Command." Jiwoo sent the standard greeting, a simple message of peace in all known languages, plus mathematical formulas that any advanced species should understand. For 10 long minutes, there was no response. The alien fleet simply hung in space, a silent threat. Then Jiwoo's console beeped. "They're responding audio and visual." The main screen flickered and they saw their first Valkyrie. The alien was tall and thin with gray-blue skin stretched tight over a face that reminded Taehyun of Earth's ancient reptiles. 4 yellow eyes blinked independently of each other. When it opened its mouth to speak, they saw rows of small, sharp teeth. "Humans of Earth," the alien said in perfect computer-translated Korean. "I am Fleet Commander Krazathul of the Valkyrie Imperial Force. Your world has been chosen for addition to our empire." Taehyun stepped forward. "We welcome peaceful contact, but Earth is not available for conquest. We suggest diplomatic—" The alien made a harsh sound that might have been laughter. "Your suggestion is noted and rejected, human. We have studied your kind. You have impressive technology but weak bodies and weaker spirits." Behind Krazathul, other Valkyrie moved around what appeared to be a command bridge. One approached and whispered something. Krazathul's mouth stretched into what might have been a smile. "My science officer informs me you have many stories of monsters and demons that hunt in your darkness, of gods and spirits that bring doom. A species that fears shadows is not fit to hold territory in this galaxy." "Those are just old stories," Taehyun said firmly. "Myths from before we understood science." "Indeed," said Krazathul. "And soon, humans will be just an old story too." The screen went black. "They've locked weapons," shouted Jiwoo as alarms blared across the station. Taehyun hit the emergency alert to Earth, then shouted, "Everyone to the escape pods, now!" They had barely reached the escape pod bay when the first shots hit. The station shook violently, throwing several crew members to the floor. Emergency lights flashed red, and the air filled with smoke. "The first pod is ready," called Jiwoo from the control panel. "Get in." Taehyun ordered the others, helping them. "Up. 4 in each pod. Go." 8 crew members piled into the first 2 escape pods. Just as the third pod was preparing to launch, a massive explosion tore through the station. Walls buckled, and flames shot through the corridor. "Launch now," Taehyun shouted to Jiwoo, who was at the controls. The remaining crew were trapped on the other side of the fire. "But the others," she began. A second explosion rocked the station, larger than the first. The lights went out completely. In the darkness, they heard screams, cut short. Launch, Taehyun said again, his voice hollow. The pod ejected from the dying station with just Taehyun and Jiwoo inside. Through the small window, they watched as Sigma-7, their home for years, broke apart in silent bursts of fire and air. Setting course for Earth, Jiwoo said, her voice shaking as she worked the pod's simple navigation system. But Earth was already under attack. The pod's communication system picked up emergency broadcasts from all over human space. The Valkyrie fleet hadn't just sent ships to Sigma-7. They had launched a full invasion of all human colonies and Earth itself. The defense fleet is engaging. Over Earth, Jiwoo reported, her face lit by the glow of bad news. But they're outnumbered 5-1. Taehyun stared at the star map, his mind racing. We can't go to Earth. It'll be a war zone by the time we arrive. Where then? Colony Omega. It's small, mostly underground. If any place can hide from these Valkyrie, it's there. As Jiwoo set the new course, the pod's sensors picked up a direct communication from Earth Defense Command to all human ships. The Kyo, Admiral's face was grim, her uniform torn and dirty. All human vessels, this is Admiral Yuna. Earth's orbital defenses have fallen. The Valkyrie have landed troops in all major cities. She paused, composing herself. We have lost this battle. All ships are ordered to scatter and hide. Save who you can. Remember who we are. Someday we will take back our home. The message ended. Taehyun and Jiwoo sat in stunned silence as the escape pod accelerated to its maximum speed, leaving their destroyed outpost behind. They were mocking us, Jiwoo said finally. The Valkyrie, laughing at our old stories about monsters and gods. Taehyun nodded slowly. They studied our myths but missed the point. Those stories weren't just about fear. They were about survival, about facing terrible things and living to tell the tale. The pod's small engines hummed as they pushed deeper into space, 2 humans alone in the vastness, carrying the news of humanity's darkest day. We'll reach Colony Omega in 3 months, Jiwoo said, checking the navigation system. Taehyun looked out at the stars, his face set with determination. Then we have 3 months to plan how humans will survive this, how we'll fight back. What? Neither of them knew, as their tiny pod disappeared into the darkness, was that something ancient and powerful had felt the invasion of Earth. Something that had slept for centuries, dismissed as mere legend. And it was waking up. 3 months passed slowly in the tiny escape pod. Taehyun and Jiwoo took turns sleeping in the single bunk while the other watched the controls. They spoke little, each lost in thoughts of home and the friends they had lost. When Colony Omega finally appeared on their sensors, it looked unchanged. A small rocky moon orbiting a gas giant. Its surface seemed empty and lifeless, which was exactly how the colonists wanted it to appear. Approaching Colony Omega, Jiwoo said, breaking the silence. Sending identification codes. For several tense minutes, there was no response. Then, a hidden door slid open in what had appeared to be solid rock, revealing a landing bay. They're still here, Taehyun said, relief flooding his voice. They survived. The landing was smooth. As the pod's door opened, they were met by 4 people holding makeshift weapons, mining tools converted for defense. Identify yourselves, ordered a tall woman with short gray hair. Commander Taehyun and Communications Officer Jiwoo. Research. Outpost Sigma-7, Taehyun said, raising his hand slowly. The weapons lowered. I'm Director Yoonji, the woman said. Welcome to what's left of humanity. Inside the colony, Taehyun was shocked at how many survivors had gathered. The underground facility, originally built for 50 miners, now housed nearly 300 people from different outposts and small colonies. The Valkyrie ignored us at first, Yoonji explained as she led them through crowded tunnels. We're too small to matter, but they'll find us eventually. In a room that had once been a mess hall, now serving as a command center, Yoonji introduced them to the colony's leadership, a mix of military personnel, scientists, and colony administrators. Among them was Minji, a small woman with intelligent eyes and a quiet voice. I'm the colony's historian, she explained when Taehyun looked confused. I study human cultures and myths. We need historians later, Taehyun said. Right now we need weapons. Maybe, Minji said softly. Maybe not. Before she could explain, alarms blared. Everyone moved with practiced speed to defensive positions. Valkyrie scout ship, reported a young man at the sensor console. Damaged. Coming in fast. Weapons? Asked Yoonji. Offline, it seems. It's going to crash about 5 kilometers from here. Yoonji turned to Taehyun. Want to see a Valkyrie up close? We need to check for survivors and gather any technology we can use. The scout ship had carved a long scar across the moon's barren surface. It lay broken and smoking when Taehyun arrived with a team of 6, including Jiwoo and Minji, who had insisted on coming. Stay alert, Taehyun warned as they approached in their surface suits. Even wounded, a Valkyrie is dangerous. The ship's hull had split open. Inside, they found 4 dead Valkyrie and 1 alive but badly hurt. The alien was smaller than Krazuthul had been, perhaps younger. He's trying to say something, Jiwoo said, adjusting her suit's translator. The wounded Valkyrie's 4 yellow eyes rolled wildly. Blue blood leaked from several wounds. When he spoke, his voice was raspy and strange. The shadow in the woods. It wasn't human. The translator converted. They're real. Your monsters are real. The alien's eyes fixed on Minji, who had moved closer. You know? He gasped. Your eyes. You know they walk. Then the Valkyrie shuddered and died. Back at the colony, they gathered again in the command center. Yoonji was practical. We'll strip the ship for parts and weapons, she said. The Valkyrie will notice their missing scout soon. We need to be ready to evacuate. But Taehyun couldn't forget the alien's last words. What did he mean? About monsters being real? All eyes turned to Minji, who had been unusually quiet since their return. He was just afraid, said Do-hyun, who had also survived the attack on Sigma-7. Dying aliens say crazy things. No, Minji said finally. He wasn't crazy. He saw something. She looked up, meeting Taehyun's eyes. What do you know about human myths, Commander? Taehyun shrugged. Old stories, gods and monsters, good and evil. Every culture has them. And what if I told you they weren't just stories? Minji asked. Her voice was still quiet, but something in it made everyone lean closer. What if, in our rush to reach the stars, we forgot what has always protected Earth? The room fell silent. Even the constant hum of the colony's air system seemed to fade. My family has kept records for generations, Minji continued. Records of things most humans have forgotten. The old ones, the guardians, the things that lived alongside us since the beginning. You're talking about myths, Jiwoo said uncertainly. I'm talking about history, Minji corrected her. History that became myth because it was easier to believe these beings were imaginary than to accept they were real. General Krazuthul stood on a hill overlooking what had once been the human city of Seoul. His conquest was going well. Humans fought bravely but without much skill. Their weapons were impressive, but their bodies were soft. Status report, he demanded of his second-in-command. The eastern continent is secured, General. The western one will fall within a week. But, the officer hesitated. Speak. We've lost contact with 3 squads in the northern forests, and the scout ship sent to investigate a strange energy reading on Colony Omega has not returned. Krazuthul hissed with annoyance. Equipment failures, or human resistance, nothing more. Yes, General, but the last transmission from Squad 7 was unusual. How so? The officer looked uncomfortable. They reported movement in the trees, too fast to track. Then they started screaming about something watching them, something with too many eyes. Krazuthul's scales bristled with anger. Superstitious fools. This is why we studied human myths before attacking, to understand what frightens them. Now my own soldiers jump at shadows. Yes, General, of course. But later that night, as Krazuthul stood alone on the balcony of what had been a human leader's home, he heard something strange. A whisper that seemed to come from the darkness itself. We have been sleeping, the voice said, though there was no one there. But now we wake. The general told himself it was just the wind. He almost believed it. Back on Colony Omega, Taehyun sat across from Minji in her small quarters. Maps and old books covered every surface. "Show me proof," he demanded. "If what?" "You're saying is true? If Earth's myths are based on real beings, then where have they been all this time? Why haven't they helped us against the Valkyrie?" "Because we asked them to leave us alone," Minji explained patiently. "Not directly, but through our actions. As humans embraced science and technology, we pushed these beings to the edges of our world. They respected our choice." Jiwoo, sitting nearby, looked skeptical. "But now they're what? Coming back to help us?" "I think they're defending their home," Minji said. "Earth isn't just our world, it never was." Taehyun rubbed his tired eyes. "Even if I believed you, and I'm not saying I do, how does this help us fight the Valkyrie?" Minji smiled for the first time since they'd met. "Tomorrow I'll show you. There's a ritual my family has preserved, a way to call them, to ask for help." "A ritual?" Jiwoo said doubtfully. "Yes," Minji said. "But we'll need your help too, Jiwoo. Your technology skills. Because I think the old rituals and new science might work better together than either one alone." Outside Minji's window, on the airless surface of the moon, something moved in the shadows of a crater. Something that shouldn't have been able to survive there. Something watching, waiting, and listening. The whispers had begun. "This is crazy," Taehyun said as he helped Minji draw strange symbols on the floor of an empty storage room. The marks were made with a mixture of soil from Earth that Minji had kept in a small box, and water from the colony's reserves. "Crazy would be not trying everything possible," Minji replied calmly. She worked with careful precision, checking her movements against an old worn book. Jiwoo sat cross-legged nearby, surrounded by small devices she had built from parts taken from the Valkyrie scout ship. "I still don't understand how my transmitters will help with your ritual." "Think of it as translation," Minji explained. "The old ones don't speak with words like we do. They communicate through energy, through feeling and intent. Your devices will help amplify our message." Director Yoonji had given them 3 days to try Minji's plan. Most of the colony's leaders thought it was a waste of time, but they had no better ideas. Their weapons were too few, their people too scattered to fight the Valkyrie directly. "It's ready," Minji said, stepping back to inspect her work. In the center of the room was a circle of symbols that looked like a mix of ancient writing systems from all over Earth. Around it, Jiwoo had placed 7 small transmitters, each glowing, with a soft blue light. "What now?" asked Taehyun. "Now we call them," Minji said, "and hope they answer." On Earth, General Krazathul was growing increasingly concerned. His conquest was behind schedule. 3 more squads had disappeared in the past week, and reports of strange occurrences were increasing. "Show me," he ordered his science officer. The officer played a recording from a Valkyrie patrol in what had once been a human forest. The soldiers moved cautiously between tall trees, weapons ready. "Something's following us," one soldier reported, voice tense. "Scan shows nothing," another replied. Then the recording showed a strange shadow moving between trees. It seemed to flow rather than walk, and it was much larger than a human. "What is that? Magnify," a soldier shouted. When the image zoomed in, even Krazathul felt a chill run through his scales. The thing had too many limbs, all moving in ways that seemed wrong. Its face, if it was a face, had no features except many small, glowing points. That might have been eyes. The recording ended with screams and weapons fire, then static. "Equipment malfunction," the science officer suggested, not sounding convinced. "And the squad?" Krazathul asked. "Still missing, General," Krazathul hissed softly. "What about the anomaly under the ocean?" The officer changed the display to show sonar readings from the large body of water humans called the Pacific. Something massive was moving deep below the surface. Something that matched no known Earth species in their databases. "It's nearly 2 kilometers long, General, and it's moving toward Japan." A human weapon? Krasthul asked hopefully. No, sir. It appears to be alive. Back on Colony Omega, the ritual had begun. Minji sat in the center of the circle, eyes closed, speaking words in languages Taehyun had never heard. Jiwoo monitored her devices, adjusting settings as the energy in the room seemed to shift and change. For hours, nothing seemed to happen. Then, as Minji's voice grew hoarse from chanting, one of Jiwoo's devices sparked and went dark. Something's responding, Jiwoo said, eyes wide. There's an energy pattern I can't explain. The air in the room felt heavy, like the moment before a storm. Taehyun felt the hairs on his arms stand up. Then a voice spoke. Not from Minji's mouth, but from the very air around them. Who calls us from the void? It asked. The voice was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It simply was. Minji opened her eyes, which now glowed with a faint blue light. I am Minji, keeper of the old knowledge. I call on behalf of humanity in our darkest hour. The air shimmered and a form appeared in the room with them. It hurt Taehyun's eyes to look at it directly. A shape that seemed to shift and change, never settling on one form. Sometimes it looked almost human. Other times it was something else entirely. I am Hyun, the being said. I speak for those who slept while humans reached for stars. Taehyun found his voice. Are you real? Or is this some trick? The being turned toward him, and Taehyun felt as if he were being seen down to his very soul. We have always been real, Commander Taehyun, Hyun said. We walked Earth before humans stood upright. We watched you grow. We protected you from things you never knew existed. Then why did you leave us? Jiwoo asked, her voice barely a whisper. Because you wished it, Hyun replied simply. Not with words, but with actions. You chose science over spirit, machines over magic. You built walls of disbelief that pushed us to the edges of your world. We respected your choice, the being continued. We retreated to the wild places, the deep places, the dark places where humans rarely go. We honored your unspoken wish for independence. Minji nodded. But now Earth has been invaded. The balance is broken. Yes, Hyun agreed. These aliens, these Valkyrie, they have violated the greater pact, the balance of the world. Will you help us fight them? Taehyun asked directly. The being was silent for a long moment. It is not simple. We cannot interact easily with your modern weapons and technology. They hurt us just as they hurt you, and we are fewer than we once were. But we need your help, Jiwoo pleaded. Humanity will die without it. And what will you offer in return? Hyun asked. If we help drive these invaders from Earth, what will humans give us? Taehyun looked at Minji, who seemed unsurprised by the question. Recognition, she said firmly. A place in the world again. Not worship, but respect. A new pact between humans and the old guardians. The being seemed to consider this. The old ways are gone, but perhaps new ways can be found. Hyun's form flickered. I must consult with the others. Some will resist. Many still remember when humans hunted us, burned us, banished us with iron and salt. Please, Taehyun said. We don't have much time. Time moves differently for us, Hyun said. I will return when the moon crosses its own shadow. And with that the being vanished. The room felt suddenly empty, the air lighter. What did it mean? About the moon crossing its shadow? Jiwoo asked. Minji checked a small device. An eclipse. There's a lunar eclipse in 3 days. Taehyun stood up, legs stiff from sitting so long. So now we wait. And hope these guardians decide to help us. They will, Minji said with certainty. But we must be ready too. The old ones cannot fight our battles alone. On Earth, General Krasthul stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching a live feed from underwater drones. The massive creature they had detected was now visible. A serpentine form with scales that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. Raw. Weapons had no effect, reported a drone operator. The creature destroyed 3 attack submarines before disappearing. Similar reports were coming in from around the planet. A mountain in what humans called Nepal had apparently moved, revealing itself to be not a mountain at all, but something ancient and angry. In the forests of North America, soldiers reported trees that bled when cut, and paths that changed direction when not observed. "This planet is wrong," muttered one of Krazathul's officers. "The humans have weapons we didn't detect." "Not weapons," Krazathul said slowly, a terrible understanding dawning. "Guardians." He remembered the human commander from the research station, and his words. "Those are just old stories, myths from before we understood science. But what if they weren't? In the depths of the ocean, in the hearts of forests, in the darkest caves, and on the highest peaks ancient eyes were opening. Ancient powers were stretching after a long sleep, and they were angry." 3 days passed slowly on Colony Omega. Taehyun spent the time planning with Director Yoonji, preparing for the worst in case Hyeon did not return. Their weapons were few, their chances slim. "If these old guardians don't help us, we need another plan," Yoonji insisted as they sat in the command center. "The Valkyrie scout ship gave us some useful technology," Taehyun admitted, "but not enough to fight a war." Across the room, Jiwoo worked with other tech specialists to create better communication systems. They needed to contact other hidden human colonies to unite what remained of humanity. Minji sat quietly in a corner, her eyes closed, seemingly deep in meditation. She had barely spoken since the ritual, conserving her strength for what was to come. As the time of the eclipse grew near, Taehyun felt a strange tension in the air. The colony's sensors began picking up unusual energy readings that the scientists couldn't explain. "It's time," Minji said suddenly, opening her eyes. "Everyone who is not needed here should leave." Director Eunji looked like she wanted to argue but then nodded. "Clear the command center," she ordered the staff. "Essential personnel only." Soon, only Taehyun, Jiwoo, Minji, Yoonji, and 2 guards remained. The lights dimmed unexpectedly, and the air grew heavy, just like during the first ritual. Then Hyun appeared. This time the being seemed more solid, its form settling into something almost human. Tall and slender with features that reminded Taehyun of ancient statues he had seen in museums. Only the eyes were wrong, glowing with an inner light that shifted colors like a sunrise. "We have decided," Hyun announced without greeting. Taehyun stepped forward. "And?" "The old ones are divided. Some wish to help humans. Others remember old hurts, old hunts. But all agree the Valkyrie must go. They disturb the balance too greatly." Relief flooded through Taehyun. "So you'll fight with us?" "Yes," Hyun said. "But understand our limits. We cannot directly touch your technology. The very things that make you strong, your machines, your electricity, your digital networks, hurt us, and we cannot travel far from Earth. Our power comes from the planet itself." "Then we'll be your hands among the stars," Taehyun said firmly. "Humans and guardians, working together." Hyun tilted its head, studying Taehyun. "A true alliance? Not just for this war?" "Yes," Minji answered before Taehyun could speak. "A new pact. Earth belongs to all its children." The being seemed to consider this, then nodded. "Very well. We will teach you to see us, to speak with us, and we will show ourselves to the Valkyrie, so they understand what world they have invaded." Director Yoonji, who had been watching in stunned silence, finally found her voice. "How many of you are there?" Hyeon turned those strange, glowing eyes toward her. "Fewer than once there were. Humans forgot us, and forgetting has power. But enough. Enough to make the invaders fear the dark." On Earth, General Krazathul was losing control of the situation. Reports of attacks by unknown entities were coming from all his bases. Valkyrie soldiers were deserting their posts, too afraid to follow orders. "This is unacceptable," Krazathul raged at his commanders. "We are warriors, conquerors of 27 worlds. We do not fear shadows." But his words rang hollow. Just last night, something had breached the defenses of his own command ship. Security footage showed only a blur, a shadow that moved too fast for cameras to capture. 5 soldiers were found later, not dead but changed, their minds broken, their eyes seeing things no one else could see. General, his science officer, said cautiously, "I think the humans have lied to us." "Explain." "We studied their myths and legends before the invasion. We thought they were just stories, products of primitive fears. But what if they were history? Records of real beings that share this planet?" Kraz-Thul wanted to dismiss the idea, but the evidence was becoming hard to ignore. If that's true, why didn't these beings defend Earth immediately? Why wait until we had almost won? Perhaps they couldn't, the science officer suggested. Or perhaps the humans had to call them somehow. A communication officer interrupted them. "General, we're picking up a transmission from a human colony. It's being broadcast on all frequencies." "Show me," Kraz-Thul ordered. The main screen lit up. With the face of a human male, Commander Tae-hyun from the research station, Kraz-Thul realized with surprise. "People of Earth and soldiers of the Valkyrie Empire," Tae-hyun said, his voice calm but commanding. "3 months ago you came to our world uninvited. You mocked our stories and dismissed our warnings. Today you will meet those you mocked." The UI image changed to show a human female with dark eyes, Minji, standing in a circle of strange symbols. As she began to speak in a language Kraz-Thul's translators couldn't identify, the screen flickered. When it cleared, Minji was not alone. Beside her stood a being that made Kraz-Thul's scales tighten against his body in instinctive fear. It was not quite solid, not quite real, but undeniably present. "I am Hyun," the being said. "I speak for those who guarded Earth before humans, built their first fire. For those who watched from the deep places, the wild places, the dark places. We have been patient. We have been still. But no longer." The being's form seemed to grow, filling the screen. "Valkyrie, you are not welcome here. This world is not yours to take. Leave now, or face what humans have forgotten how to fear." The transmission ended, leaving Kraz-Thul's command center in silence. "Orders, General?" someone finally asked. Kraz-Thul stared at the blank screen. Part of him wanted to dismiss this as an elaborate human trick. But deep in his core, where instinct lived, he knew it was real. He had seen the truth in that strange being's eyes. "Prepare the fleet," he said. "We will bomb the human colony that sent this message. Then we will increase our attacks on Earth. If these guardians want to fight, we will give them one they will not forget." Back on Colony Omega, Tae-hyun watched Hyun carefully. Will it work? Will they be scared enough to leave? The being's expression was impossible to read. No, they are too proud, too sure of their weapons and their strength. They will fight harder now. "Then we've made things worse," Ji-woo said, her voice tight with worry. "Not worse," Hyun corrected. "More honest. Now the real battle begins." Minji approached, looking exhausted from the energy spent during the transmission. "Hyun has called the others. They gather now on Earth." "What others?" Director Yoonji asked. "The old ones," Minji explained. "The forgotten gods. The things your ancestors called spirits and demons and monsters. The guardians of mountain and forest and sea." "And can they stand against Valkyrie weapons?" Tae-hyun asked the question that worried him most. "Alone, no," Hyun admitted. "Your invaders' weapons hurt us as much as they hurt you. But we have powers they do not understand. And now we have you." "Us?" Ji-woo looked confused. "Humans," Hyun clarified. "Your technology paired with our abilities creates something new. Something neither of us could achieve alone." Outside the command center window, the stars were visible on the airless surface of the moon. Among them, Tae-hyun knew, was the Valkyrie fleet, powerful, numerous, and now angry. "We need to return to Earth," he said suddenly. "If that's where the battle will be fought, that's where we need to be." "The Valkyrie control all approach routes," Yoonji pointed out. They'll shoot down any ship we send. Hyun's form seemed to smile, though it was hard to be sure with a face so unlike a human's. Not if they cannot see it. Not if it travels paths they do not know exist. What do you mean? Taehyun asked. There are ways between worlds that are not marked on any star chart, Hyun said. Ways that were old when your kind first looked up at the night sky and wondered what lived among the stars. Minji nodded in understanding. The old roads. The hidden paths. Yes, Hyun confirmed. I can guide a small ship. But we must hurry. The Valkyrie grow desperate, and desperate enemies are the most dangerous. Taehyun looked at Director Yoonji, who nodded her permission. Get our best ship ready, he ordered Ji-woo. And our best fighters. We're going home. As preparations began, Taehyun found a quiet moment to speak with Minji alone. Are you sure about this alliance? Can we trust these beings? Minji's eyes were tired but certain. They protected Earth long before we existed, Taehyun. They could have destroyed us at any time, but they chose to let us grow instead. Yes, I trust them. What happens after, if we win? Something new, Minji said simply. A world where humans aren't alone. Where we remember there are older, stranger things sharing our home. Outside, on the surface of the moon, something moved that should not have been able to exist in vacuum. It left no footprints, cast no shadow, but it was there, watching, waiting, ready to guide them home on roads between the stars. The journey back to Earth was unlike anything Taehyun had ever experienced. Their small ship, carrying just 6 humans, himself, Ji-woo, Minji, and 3 of Colony Omega's best fighters, moved through space in ways that defied normal physics. Hyun stood at the front of the ship, its form constantly shifting between solid and something else. The being's hands, if they could be called hands, moved in strange patterns, opening what it called the old roads between stars. Don't try to understand it, Minji advised when she saw Taehyun's confused expression. These paths existed before humans had words to describe them. Through the ship's view screen, Taehyun saw impossible colors and shapes that hurt his eyes. Sometimes he thought he glimpsed other things moving along these strange paths, forms, even less human than Hyun. The others traveled to Earth as well, Hyun explained, noticing Taehyun's stare. The great ones, the ancient ones, those who slept the longest. After what felt like both minutes and years, they emerged above Earth. The planet looked both familiar and different, blue and green and beautiful, but now with strange lights pulsing across its surface in patterns Taehyun had never seen before. "That you are awakening," Minji whispered. "The old ones are fully awake now." In orbit around Earth, the Valkyrie fleet hung like predatory fish in a sea of stars. Hundreds of ships all bristling with weapons. "They cannot see us," Hyun assured them. "Not while we travel the old roads." As they approached Earth's atmosphere, Taehyun saw something massive rise from the Pacific Ocean. A serpentine form larger than any creature he had ever imagined, its scales reflecting moonlight as water cascaded from its body. "What is that?" Ji-woo gasped. "One who slept in the deep," Hyun said simply. "One who now remembers hunger." The enormous creature opened a mouth that could swallow buildings and roared a challenge at the Valkyrie ships. Then, impossibly, it began to rise, not swimming but flying through the air as if it were water. "How?" Taehyun began, but Minji touched his arm. "Don't ask how," she said. "Just accept that it is." The serpent struck a Valkyrie battleship, coiling around it like a snake. With prey, metal screamed as the ship crumpled in the massive creature's grip. Elsewhere, Taehyun saw forests moving, not just trees swaying in wind, but entire woodlands shifting location, roots pulling from the earth to walk on legs that should not exist. Mountains trembled and revealed enormous faces of stone. Shadows in cities took shape and substance, rising as figures that towered over buildings. "Earth defends itself," Hyun said. "Now we must play our part." Their ship landed in what had once been Seoul, now a base for Valkyrie ground forces. As they stepped outside, Taehyun was struck by how different the air felt, charged with energy, alive in a way he had never noticed before. The command ship, he said, pointing to a massive Valkyrie vessel hovering above what had once been the city center. That's where Krazathul will be. Then that's where we go, Jiwoo said, hefting a weapon built from parts of the scout ship they had found on Colony Omega. Minji carried no weapon. Instead, she wore strange symbols painted on her skin and carried a small bag of earth soil. Hyan walked beside her, its form becoming more solid with each step on Earth's surface. The others gather, Hyan said. They will create a distraction. As if in response to its words, the ground began to shake. In the distance, Taehyun saw an enormous form rise from the Han River, a woman made of water, her face serene but her eyes blazing with blue fire. She was taller than the tallest buildings, and when she opened her mouth, the sound was like 1,000 waterfalls. Valkyrie soldiers ran in panic. Some fired weapons at the water woman, but their shots passed through her, or were absorbed without effect. She reached down and swept a massive hand through their ranks, leaving nothing behind. Now, Taehyun ordered, while they're distracted, the small team moved through streets filled with chaos. Everywhere, the old guardians were emerging. From sewers came things made of shadow and garbage that consumed Valkyrie whole. From parks rose beings of branch and leaf that impaled aliens on sudden sharp thorns. And above it all, the sky itself seemed alive. Clouds forming faces that blew, hurricane winds at Valkyrie ships making them crash into each other. They cannot win against this, Jiwoo said as they ran. No technology can fight a world that fights back. They can still destroy much before they fall, Taehyun reminded her. We need to end this quickly. Inside his command ship, General Krazathul watched in horror as his invasion collapsed. His screens showed impossible things, creatures from human mythology now made terribly real, tearing his forces apart. It was all true, his science officer whispered, scales pale with fear. All their myths, all their monsters. No, Krazathul insisted, though he no longer believed it himself. This is some human technology we don't understand, some weapon they kept hidden. Sir, a communications officer called, we're detecting a small human ship approaching. It's requesting to dock. Krazathul hissed in surprise. Humans? Coming to us, put them on screen. The main display showed a small vessel of human design. Standing before it was the same human commander he had mocked months ago, Taehyun. General Krazathul, Taehyun said, his voice calm despite the chaos around him. I'm coming aboard to discuss your surrender. Rage filled the general. My surrender? Never. I will destroy this planet before I surrender to humans. Not to humans, said another voice, and the camera shifted to show a being that made Krazathul's hearts stutter in his chest. To us, to those who were here first. It was Hyan, but changed. More solid, more real, more powerful than when they had seen it in the transmission. Its eyes burned with ancient light. Dock them, Krazathul ordered suddenly. I want to face this human and this thing myself before I destroy this world. The Valkyrie command ship was enormous, its corridors designed for beings larger than humans. Taehyun led his small team through them, guided by Hyun, who seemed to know exactly where to go. Valkyrie soldiers watched them pass but made no move to stop them. Fear showed clearly in their yellow eyes, not of the humans but of Hyan, who radiated power that made the ship's lights flicker as it passed. They reached the command bridge, where General Krazathul waited. The Valkyrie leader stood tall, his ceremonial armor gleaming, but Taehyun could see the fear he tried to hide. You were wrong, Taehyun said simply. Our stories weren't just stories. So it seems, Krazathul admitted. But I still have this ship. I still have weapons that can burn your cities to ash. Look outside, Minji suggested quietly. On the bridge's main screen, they could see Seoul, and the impossible army that now gathered there. The water woman from the river stood beside a man made of mountain stone. Creatures of shadow and light moved between them. Things with too many limbs and not enough faces climbed buildings with impossible speed. And above them, All the dragon from the Pacific now circled the command ship itself, its enormous body stretching for kilometers. You weren't the dominant species on this planet, Krazathul realized, his voice hollow with understanding. You were just the most visible. We shared this world, Minji corrected him. We just forgot how. Hian stepped forward, and everyone, human and Valkyrie alike, fell silent. Your empire ends here, the being said to Krazathul. You will leave Earth. You will tell others what you found here. You will warn them that this world has guardians older than your civilization. And if I refuse? Krazathul asked, though there was no real defiance left in his voice. In answer, Hian simply gestured. The solid metal floor beneath them became briefly liquid, then solid again, with Krazathul now embedded in it up to his knees. That is the least of what we can do, Hian said softly. The general looked at his trapped legs, then at the view screen, showing the impossible army outside, and finally at the humans who stood before him without fear. I surrender, he said. 3 months later, Taehyun stood on a hilltop overlooking the rebuilt outskirts of Seoul. Beside him stood Jiwoo and Minji, watching as humans worked alongside beings that, until recently, had been thought to be only myths. Tree spirit with bark for skin and flowers growing from its shoulders helped lift heavy beams for new buildings. A river spirit in the form of a small blue child purified water for drinking. Beings of all shapes and forms, once hidden, now walked openly among the people they had protected from the shadows for so long. It's strange, Jiwoo said. How quickly people accepted them. Is it? Minji asked. Humans always knew deep down. That's why the stories persisted even when we thought we were too advanced for myths. Taehyun watched as a group of children played with a being made of light and air, their laughter carrying up the hill. What happens now, with the Valkyrie gone? Now, we rebuild, Minji said. Not just our cities, but our understanding of our world, of our place in it. Hyun appeared beside them, still startling even after months of working together. The being had become something of an ambassador between humans and the old guardians. The other stars watch, Hyun said by way of greeting. Word spreads of what happened here, of what lives on Earth. Good, Taehyun said firmly. Let them know that Earth is protected. Not just protected, Hyun corrected. Shared. That is what makes this world unique. Not just its guardians, but its humans who learn to make peace with us rather than war. In the distance, the great dragon from the Pacific could be seen, its enormous form cur